Welcome to Raising the Bar with RebuttalPR, the podcast where we elevate the stories of the plaintiff's bar and dive into the key trends shaping the civil justice system today. I'm your host, Ray DeLorenzi, and in each episode, we'll bring you insightful interviews with leading attorneys, expert perspectives on current legal events, and in-depth discussions on the issues that matter most. Now let's jump in. Let's say you have a couple $1,000s in cash and you were going to set it on fire anyway. Maybe you just use it to purchase something for a newswire. That is, I think, a useful utility. Kidding aside, that's really it. Like, it is such a waste of money. Hey, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Raising the Bar with RebuttalPR. I'm your host, Ray DeLorenzi, and we're back for another Hot Takes episode with my co-host or my replacement host, Hannah Gallagher. Hannah, great to see you again. Great to have you back.
You too. Thanks. I love it. Podcast co-host of the year. I think I'm going to win an award.
You may, at least for this one, because you've been our only co-host. And this has been like the Hot Takes podcast we did before was incredibly popular. I think maybe it was due to my takes, or maybe it was due to your hosting abilities. But anyway, we're going to do another one again. Hannah, I guess you just want to take it away. You want to let her rip? What do you got for me today?
Love it. I got lots of questions, both from our internal team and externally, some questions that we often get. I think the first one where we should start is kind of the state of the media and where people are getting their news. I know we talked about it a bit last time, but where exactly are people getting their news now? I know you said there's lots of sources, but how do you kind of determine where young people, middle-aged people, depending on the age or depending on their demographics, who's reading news where, and what do you think is important?
Yeah, like that's like a massive question, and I think you just did that to spin me up a bit.
Sure.
First, when people say get news, like what does news mean? And really, it's where do people get information? And there are more places than ever for people to get information. And you can call it news, you can call it whatever you want. People are like, oh, I don't trust, journalists, but they are getting their information from them constantly. It just depends on the vehicle in which they get it. But at the end of the day, you need to be everywhere and be ubiquitous if you're a law firm owner. What I would start with though is like, oh, where do I need to be? Is who's your audience? And then where is your audience getting their information? That is what I think you need to start with and solve for. But people are like, oh, like mainstream media is dead. Like what is, I don't even know what that is anymore. And you look at the national nightly news, it still gets several million people watching it. And like, that's not insignificant. Local news still gets big numbers. A lot of people, like to talk about like CNN and be like, oh, I want to be on CNN. CNN at some hours, it's like a lot fewer people than local news. And people get their information on phones going to local news websites. They get, and some people are like, oh, people get their news from TikTok today. That is true. But where do those TikTok influencers get the topics that they want to discuss? They get it from more traditional news outlets. So, I think one of the big themes though it is sort of choose your own adventure. People decide where they want to get their information from, and all that information then is through that specific person's lens. So, let's say people in more conservative circles, want to like listen to Steve Bannon's podcast or, whatever, or, more liberal people want to, do the Pod Save America crew or Rachel Maddow. People get their information really through an echo chamber that really supports their views and position. But I would not undersell or understate the influence still of, your local TV station or your local newspaper or, even like national news. While they may have huge economic challenges, they still have massive audiences of people that you can reach.
Yeah. Do you have anything that you read daily that you would suggest to people? What do you read?
What I read daily, again, maybe, most of the folks listening to this are lawyers and in the plaintiff's bar. So, maybe our media diet should be sort of similar. I read like the New York Times top headlines every day. It is the paper of record still. A couple million people read it. I feel like it's important. Law 360, I check out every day, and I see their headlines of what's happening in the legal community. And same thing for law.com as well. Then I get a variety of different newsletters. that I feel like gives me a good media diet of what's happening in politics, which often intersects with the litigation work we do, because there's like a political litigation regulatory kind of intersection, and that's the world we operate. So like Politico playbook, I read in the mornings. I also read Political Wire, which is like a daily newsletter that throughout the day has like key headlines. So I don't have to immerse myself into Twitter, for example, which is like a hellscape, but I can get like the key headlines of what's happening in the news. Um, and then obviously through the work we do for law firms, we have news coming in all the time through like in Slack, through different systems that we've set up. And I read all that. My wife jokes like when's the last time you read a book? And I was like, it's been a while, but I read all day, every day, whether it's the news or legal filings or things like that. So my, and then I have some Substack folks I follow.
Hmm.
And most of those folks are people I agree with. So it's like, they're just, restating my opinions. And then I have some podcasts I listen to as well.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know how unique that is,
Yeah.
and I know like Hannah, like, you're big on podcasts and,
Yeah.
but
Podcasts kind of shape how I listen to my set podcasts every morning on my walk with my dog, and then that kind of steers me in different directions. So if I hear something interesting on a podcast and I want to go a little deeper, see who else has reported on it, and that kind of gives me an agenda of what news I want to read, because otherwise I think I get overwhelmed. I'm sure other people do with the amount of news there is, and I know it's our job, but there's so much all the time. And I think podcasts do a really good job of consolidating that stuff and then giving me a direction to go. So that's how I do it in the morning. But
now are your podcasts though like timely?
yeah, mostly. Yeah. I mean, I listen to like NPR's daily news dump. I listen to the daily, like the classic ones. And then, sometimes you can tell an interview has been recorded weeks in advance. So they're a little bit delayed on their breaking news, but sometimes that leads me down a more long form, who's doing an investigation on a plant somewhere, or what reporters are really taking months of investigating an area and some problems that are going on. So it varies, but I feel like it leads me down the right path.
Yeah, most of my podcasts are not timely. They're more long form,
Yeah.
evergreen, featurey sort of stuff. And for the timely stuff, I'm getting it on my phone in real time. And yeah, because this in the world we operate, like timeliness is everything. So if you don't like, if I don't read it, then it's just, it's like, oh, I got to this podcast 3 days after the news. Like, what difference did it make? So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that leads me to obviously we work in the legal world and legal news, and something we talk about a lot is how no comment is always a bad response, or most of the time a bad response. Why don't you think lawyers use the media more often? Why do lawyers say no comment? Why is that the gut reaction, that lawyers think that they shouldn't comment on a case? Do they, what should they do instead?
we are experts on how to interact and interface with the media and know quite a bit about the legal world. We're not lawyers, but we know enough to be more than dangerous. Lawyers, on the other hand, they know how to practice law. They have a bar license. They went to law school, and they don't know how to interact with the media. And I think some have preconceived notions of how to do it, and I think that leads them to sort of misunderstanding what they can do. And again, it's just a matter of, I think lawyers may not appreciate the importance of interfacing with the media in terms of having that trust and credibility and third-party validation. And again, it depends on the type of work you're doing. But if you're working on big cases that are attracting media attention, I think it's a mistake to not be engaging there. And we've talked about this before. Saying no comment strikes me most of the time as ridiculous. If, for example, you filed a lawsuit, there are allegations you made in the complaint that are now public record, and you can literally repeat those as your comment. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to say no comment. And instead of saying no comment, let's say there was a situation, and again, they are extremely rare. You could just say nothing. Saying no comment shows you have something to hide, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not ever a good look. So, why lawyers though don't, I think engage with the media? I think it's a matter of not having the time. not having the expertise, and also I think being a bit fearful that they're going to get caught in a gotcha when in fact there's really no gotcha to be had. I think there's just like an innate skepticism that's only grown over time. And, I hate to, obviously self-serving, that's why they need experts like us.
Mhm.
Um, but I think the the media should be used as a vehicle to get the truth out, and to get your perspective out. And particularly, the work we do is in the plaintiff's bar, that we like to believe, and I believe it, that we have the truth on our side. So why wouldn't you want to make sure that that truth is getting out to the people that need to know about it?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. If we tell the stories properly, then I don't think there's much harm to be done, but there is also a skill to it and making sure you frame it properly.
Yeah. And
Um,
you got to know, look, there's always risks. And like, life is full of risks, but you have to know how to calculate them and how to mitigate them. And we would never want to do anything that could hurt the litigation, but there are many ways to navigate, that. And look, the corporate defendants are using the media all the time to make sure, their perspective is getting out there. They're polluting the science, often polluting the jury pool. If you just want to
mhm.
stand by and let that happen, I think that is a many times a dangerous place to be.
Yeah. Um, that standing by and letting things happen. Something that I've been thinking about a lot is how law firms should be talking about political issues or if they should be. I know a lot of law firms who feel like they're under threat right now. There's a lot of political drama going on. Should lawyers respond to political issues? Do you have an opinion on how they show their public, their stance on an issue? How do they go about that if they feel really strongly about a topic?
It's not a yes or no answer, but it's one that again involves risks that you need to calculate and be comfortable with. And I don't think firms should take positions that are not true to their values. So um, that is essentially taking a position for the sake of taking a position. Um, and if they are a law firm, though, in which there is a political issue that does intersect with their values, let's say you're, you know, easiest example, you're a personal injury firm and they are looking to pass like horrific tort reform in your state that is going to destroy the legal rights of the people you represent. It seems like something you should take a stance on, is within your values. On the flip side, understand that maybe in that state, it's Republicans that are really pushing that. And there are Republicans can get injured too. And maybe they'll have an allergy to you taking a position on that. That seems to me a risk that is calculable and worth taking. But when, let's say we're talking about an issue like, take immigration, for example, and let's say your firm is in an area or is in a practice area that does not represent an immigrant community. That is a harder call. And there are firms say, you know what is happening related to the immigrant community is against our values, and we're going to speak up about it. And I salute them, but they should do so knowing that there could be business consequences. They could be positive consequences. That maybe there are clients out there who say, I want a firm that is going to fight for people like that, for
Hmm.
people who are not in a position of privilege. And then there could be people who are, say, you know what, I'm with, this administration and its deportation agenda, and now I'm not going to, give my business to this law firm. As long as you know the risks and you're doing things that are true to your values and don't feel out of step,
Hmm.
um, you know, I am generally supportive of it, but you just gotta know what the landscape is and understand the pros and cons of doing so.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you have to realize it's not going to please everyone. You are a lawyer who's, you're litigating against big companies that are going to have their own political stances. Not everybody's going to like what you do all the time, but you kind of hope and yeah, go along with your values that you please the right people, and it's all right if you piss some other people off.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's something that to be said about a law firm that has a perspective
mhm.
and that stands for something. And
Yeah.
I mean, you can look at let's take the big law firms that settled with, the Trump administration early on.
Hmm.
And, you can say, we're coming at this from the cheap seats. We didn't know what threats they felt in the internal machinations, but we do know there are clients of those firms who left because they said, you know what, if you can't stand up to them, how are you going to stand up for us?
Yeah.
So business consequences can happen, pro and con, and some of them can also be unforeseen.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. All right, a bit of a pivot, but something I know you have strong feelings about this, and we talked about a little last
What
time.
don't I have strong feelings about, Hannah?
I know I like it. It's good. I like the strong feelings. So putting a press release on a news wire, I don't love this. And I see it all the time, and it costs thousands of dollars, and I don't think people really recognize that. How do you feel about news wires? Is there ever a time to use a news wire? When is that time?
Yeah, at that
Uh,
time, let's say you have a couple $1,000s in cash and you were going to set it on fire anyway. Maybe you just use it to purchase something for a newswire. That is, I think, a useful utility. Um, Kidding aside, that's really it. Like it is such a waste of money. Here's where actually it's needed these days. If you're a publicly traded company, you
mhm.
often if, from a regulatory standpoint, a security standpoint, you have to put certain news out on a newswire.
Yeah.
Aside from that, if you're a plaintiff law firm, the folks we work with, there is pretty much zero reason to be paying for PR Newswire, Business Wire. There's a couple others out there. It is a complete waste of money.
Hmm.
And um, honestly, when I see law firms use it, it tells me they don't know how to engage with the media and they just think that is the way to do it. Reporters do not view these things like
Yeah.
ever, ever.
Yeah.
They hear from people who, reach out to them directly. So like a newswire, it just boggles my mind why you would use it or think it is useful. Now, many years ago, it was kind of an SEO gimmick.
Mm.
People would do it and like PR Newswire, then you would let's say then you searched for a term that was in that press release, it would come up in the top of Google results. Google has devalued Business Wire and PR Newswire. That does not work anymore. It was really not a good idea beforehand because it was like a sugar high. It would last very, not very long. But now it's also worthless from that perspective. Um, Again, there are um, sometimes in class actions, you have to put a press release on the wire for class notice. Again, that's a different ball of wax, but you're not reaching anyone. And what drives me like completely nuts is you'll see the reports that get generated and be like, oh, your press release was on like 2,000 websites. Like
Hmm.
it was on Yahoo Financial and whatever. Do you know? Okay. You know how many people read that? Like nobody, like
Yeah.
literally nobody. It
This time we
is
clicked on a Yahoo result. I don't know if I have since I was a kid. you know.
Yeah, yeah. Like, only times like I'm like researching something and I'm like, oh, like I found this like press release from 3 years ago that someone put out. Like it is a complete waste of money. That is
Yeah.
not how you. It is not news. This is not
Yeah.
news.
Um, I know you talked to Allison Frankel a couple months ago at this point, and she talked about pitches and receiving pitches and receiving information. And can you speak a little bit to how you do if you're not going to use a newswire? How do you get the information to the reporters? I know we do it a lot, but I don't think other people really know that there's a way to get to reporters otherwise.
Yeah. First, you have to have an interesting story to tell, and um, I'll, very often I think attorneys it's sort of both sides. One is they think they have the most interesting story in the world. And quite honestly, it's not that interesting, or there's something about it that actually makes it interesting, and it's not what they think it is. Then you have the other side of the coin, where attorneys don't realize how interesting it is, some of the work they're doing. Like the complaint they're filing has like really interesting allegations. They don't appreciate that. So first and foremost, what's the story? Second is you have to find the reporter who will find that story interesting, compelling, and is what they report on from a day-to-day basis. So, you mentioned Alison Frankel, who was on our podcast several months ago. She used to be the legal reporter for Reuters. If like, you were like filing a lawsuit related to like a motor vehicle accident in Sheboygan, not that it's not important, she's not going to like report on that unless it had some like broader legal implication, whatever that may be. So you have to find the right reporter. And third is you got to get their attention quickly. And it's helpful if you have a relationship with them. Like, so they see your name in their inbox and they're like, you know what? They've given me useful, interesting information before. But like, also, if you've been someone who's like emailed them like 20 times with garbage, well, you're going to go right to their trash before they even open it. So oftentimes they just see the subject line. Make sure the subject line like kind of stands out and not with exclamation points or sensationalist garbage. Like, get to the point quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And the email, get to the point quickly, and then back up what you're saying. Like, don't say like, this is the craziest case, this is the greatest case. Like, tell it like it is, take excerpts from the filing, attach the stuff, lay it out there, and then let them make a determination.
Mm-hmm.
That is the way to do it. We got to figure out what the story is, who the best person, that can tell a story, and then be succinct and to the point and back up your facts with source documents when you can. That's just a
Yeah.
start, but that would be my initial, sort
Yeah.
of how you get in front of the right reporter.
We had somebody ask if they should include an emoji in a subject line, and I thought that was just wild. It's like, I don't know how, are we selling something illegal through our emails or something? I don't know what an emoji in a subject line would do, but
If I see an emoji in the subject line, I just delete the email. I assume
Yeah.
someone's trying to like sell me some like, weight loss product
Yeah.
or I don't know. I'm like, delete. And when would that be taken seriously? I have no idea. But
Yeah.
the other thing is, it's about telling the story. And I think attorneys don't appreciate this. And I understand that because they actually they got to like practice law. And this media should not be their number one focus. I think it's dangerous if it is. But timeliness, you cannot like, it's not you can't, but it's very difficult to be pitching a story that involves a complaint you filed 3 months ago, unless it has some brand new thing in there that wasn't reported on previously. Timeliness is everything, especially now. The news cycle moves so fast. There's cycles within cycles. Like you need to prepare and premeditate these things and then act on it in real time. Can't be waiting, days. It's too old by then. No one's going to care.
Yeah. Yeah. The only time where I would see, waiting or something to keep in mind for lawyers is when you see a pattern within your cases. That's something we talk about a lot, is when there's a lot of cases about a similar issue, or, you're seeing the same defendant have a pattern of conduct that you think is outrageous, and then you continue to have cases against them. That's the point where some sort of investigative reporter or something can dive really deep into that subject and find the right the right thread to pull and figure out what exactly is going on in a corporation or some sort of defendant that is having ongoing issues. But I would agree, you got to jump on the news.
Yeah, you raise a really good point. For those long-term feature stories, yes, you can piece that stuff together over time. But if it's a complaint about like a current event, you got to do it in real time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, a little bit of a hop. So last time we talked about social media, what's good to put on social media, how lawyers should use social media, if TikTok is cringy, which I think we decided, yes, it's a little cringy. But what about firm accounts? What should firms be posting about, not individual lawyers, and to make their firms interesting, and what exactly they should be putting on their firm accounts?
Yeah. So you got to figure out what the platform is first. And and it also depends on the type of litigation that you do. I think if you're doing, sort of run of the mill personal injury, I think your firm Facebook page needs to be kept fresh. And I think LinkedIn is also really important. Now, if you're doing, let's say, like antitrust work, for example, like Facebook is not important. And I would actually advise not to be on Facebook for several reasons. But LinkedIn is really important for the firm page. Here's what's I think the most important. If you're going to have a Facebook page, LinkedIn page, you need to commit to it, and you need to keep it continually, watered and taken care of, and having a couple posts a week. Otherwise, you're sending a signal to prospective clients and also to hires that like nobody's manning the store, nobody's home. Can I trust these people with this case? And you may say, it's only my social media. Like, who cares?
Mm,
Well, you're talking about, you could have a potential client who like all they would look at is social media, and they may not trust you if you're not there. So you have to
mm,
really think about it from that person's perspective. Now, in the same time, like if I was looking to hire a lawyer and they had a Facebook page that had like, bizarro stuff on there, I wouldn't want to trust them either. So,
mm,
so you have to figure out what the content is and the cadence is and whether you should be there in the first place. If you're not going to commit to it, you shouldn't really be there at all. Um, so Facebook, again, I think it really depends on the type of firm you are. But if you're doing, PI work, I think you need to be on Facebook and you need to have a few posts there, a week to show that it's live. And that should complement any paid strategy that you're doing. LinkedIn is important because of referral sources. Um, and also for new hires, they're going to look at you on LinkedIn. So, I think being active on LinkedIn is really important. Um, the one other sort of, I think, important caveat here is on LinkedIn, especially those company pages, even for if someone's following you, those posts don't come up in people's feeds very often. Someone's got to go to your firm page and then they'll see them. What LinkedIn really puts in the algorithm is people. And also, that's how we relate to each other. I don't relate to a firm, I relate to a lawyer at the firm. So having your lawyers being engaged on LinkedIn, posting content on a semi-regular basis, having smart things to say, again, sends a signal to um, potential hires, referral sources. Even, if you have a more sophisticated client, they're going to look you up on LinkedIn. I think those are important places to be.
hmm Yeah, I would agree. LinkedIn, I use LinkedIn regularly to keep up with people, keep up with, I get some interesting content on there of not people that I follow. I think their algorithm's pretty good at figuring out what I'm interested in. So, yeah, that's still a good spot. Um, One thing on LinkedIn that I have seen quite often is firms who seem to be a little bit lazy about their social media and maybe just rely on AI to write their social media content. I know we've been talking about AI a lot in our firm and what we do and how it can help us. Can you kind of talk a little bit about how AI could be helpful for law firms or more broadly about how AI could be used or should be used?
Yeah. And look, we use it for our company's, LinkedIn content. And, I use it for some of my own, LinkedIn content. But I use it carefully because people are not stupid. You could sniff this AI stuff out from a mile away. And what does that tell people? Like when they see that you're just using AI, like, do you not have an original thought? Are you lazy? Can I
Mm,
trust you? So here's how I use it, and and how we help law firms use it. It's great to brainstorm ideas, and say like, hey, here are some like things that we care about. Like, what are some like social media themes? And like, you can use it as a brainstorm partner, and I think it's very useful. If you have it write the content, I think it's pretty bad.
mm,
What we've done, at least for our firm, is we have our own, we've made our own GPT where it trains on our voice and
mm,
it's created content. And even then, I'd say half of it's bad.
mm,
And we, have to rewrite it or rework it. Um, but it provides a really good brainstorming partner to come up with ideas. Because again, the cadence is important. You need to be posting regularly. And sometimes, it's like, what am I going to post about today? Um, Having AI just churn out some stuff, particularly the images, they've gotten better, but still, like, you see pictures and people have like, 7 fingers like on their hands, and it's like that doesn't look right. And again, like, what are you doing?
yeah.
Um, People can gravitate to interesting stories, things about people. Um, And like, you don't need to cut corners on this stuff. Just do it right.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm super hesitant. I feel like an old person when I say that I'm super hesitant to use AI, but I am, and I understand people who, lawyers especially who don't want to use it or feel like, it's a scary new tool. Do you have anything you would say to a lawyer who's super resistant to like, oh, try it out, or what would you tell them, or would you say it's all right, you don't need to use it?
You know what? Again, I actually in this case applaud a lawyer who's hesitant about it. We have seen too many lawyers writing legal briefs with AI, and
Hmm.
despite getting caught and getting excoriated by judges and then being in the media for it, lawyers just continue to do it. What is it going to take for the lesson to be learned that it is a completely terrible idea? But
Hmm.
I do think there needs to be an education about what it is good for. And it's good for again, brainstorming ideas. I use it sometimes, like, if I'm gonna be like writing an email, I'm like, and I write it and I'm like, that needs to be like taken down a touch. Like, it's a little too,
Too hot.
like
Too hot.
too hot.
Yeah.
And I'll ask it to like rewrite it and tone it down. And it's pretty good at that sometimes. Like, not all the time. And I still review it and I'm still putting my name on it. But people should experiment. It's worth experimenting. I mean, that's a great lesson about life. You experiment and you try things out. You don't actually have to use it. But I mean, for the love of Pete, do not write a legal brief with. I mean, like, I just do not understand. This happens so. It's like once a week now we're seeing a story about some lawyer doing this and getting crushed.
Yeah.
Like, it
It'll
blows my
have
mind.
100 M dashes in it, words that nobody ever uses, and weird
Fake
formatting.
citations. It's just like, what are you doing? It's just
Yeah,
like,
let's
yeah,
avoid that. Yeah.
yeah. But again, I think experimenting and these tools are just getting better and better. But also, look, maybe they'll have good judgment eventually. They have bad judgment. And that's
Mm.
because they're machines. They don't understand everything involved. But like, again, oftentimes I use it to talk through problems. I'm like, hey, I have this problem. Like, how would you think through it? And it gives me some interesting ideas, and it never gives me the answer 100%, but it gets the ball rolling, and that can be really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's good to think about. All right. Well, I think that's all of our hot topic questions today. You have any other hot topics you want to cover?
I always do, Hannah, but no, you brought the thunder today. Thanks for really
Okay.
getting me like revved up. I like need
Bye.
to, yeah, I need to take a
Walk.
Xanax or something. Go for
Touch
a
some.
walk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
uh, Great.
everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Raising the Bar with Rebuttal PR. Hannah Gallagher, our host for today. Thanks so much for pitching in and doing a great job. Thanks for listening to this episode of Raising the Bar with Rebuttal PR. Don't forget to subscribe and follow to join us next time. See you then.